Okay, good morning all. So, so far we looked at the basics of C sharp, data types, functions, loops, and conditional statements like that. A few more lectures we will spend on some deeper concepts like classes, inheritance, polymorphism, etc., because they will be used in Unity as well. Okay, so if you remember, this was one of the earlier programs that we did on classes. Okay, where we had a class called person, and that person had two attributes, name and age, and we also had a method in that class where that person introduces himself as I am so and so, and I am so many years old. Okay, and we had a separate main program where the objects of that class person are created, like person p1, p2, p3, and so on, and also some other calculator class we had, and so on. Okay, so today we will look at a slightly related but different concept. That is constructors. So first let me change this class name. Okay, let me call it, say, student. Okay, now, and let me rename this also. Now let's say student has a name and age, and also okay, so first let's just see these two things. So in the program, let me remove all these lines. So in the main function, we can create a new student by saying student, say s1 equal to new student, right? And if we have to fill the details, we say s1 dot name equal to whatever, say Anil, s1 dot age is 17, and so on. Okay, and then we can print their values, s1 dot name and s1 dot age. Okay, so let's run it. Student.age is never used. Oh, I'm sorry, this is int. Yeah, we can say byte also. I'm just using int, and I hope that should solve it. What else? Warning. Okay, these are the errors. What is it saying? Protection level. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, we have to say public. So now, so that we can access it from a different file, right? Yeah. Okay, so name and age are printed. Now suppose if I want to declare these values here itself, can I do that? Suppose, can I say name equal to Anil, age equal to 17, whatever that is? Can I do that? What? Yes? Okay, let's run it and see. Now let me remove it here. Then here I cannot say s1 dot name, right? I have to say student dot name. Now let's see. It's not working. You see, it's saying an object reference is required for the non-static field, method, or property. Similarly, an object reference is required for the non-static field, method, or property, student name. You see, we may give some value, but that doesn't make sense. That doesn't mean anything, because these are the values of one particular student, right? S1's name and age may be something, S2's name and age may be something else, some second student's name and age will be different, third student's name and age will be different, right? So all these are values which go with the object, right? Now suppose so right now what we were doing, so far what we have been doing, we had a class, we just declared the fields and the methods of the class. We did not give them any values, right? We just said there is a field called name, there is a field called age. We did not give value, what is the name, what is the age. We did not give it in the class definition itself, right? We first declared objects, S1 is a student, S2 is a student, and so on. And for each of these objects, we said what is the name of S1, what is the age of S1. Similarly, what is the name of S2, what is the age of S2, and so on. That's what we did, right? So usually we don't do it like this. We remove these values, and here we create student instances. I can create another student. I'll just copy this. I can say S2 is another instance of a student. Say S2's name is, say, Geeta. Age is 19. Okay, and I can print S2's values. All right. So I can create any number of students like this, right? So let me run this. Okay. So student 1 name, age, student 2 name, age, and so on. So a particular object will have values for the fields, particular values for each of the fields, right? Class values, class fields itself don't have values. Okay. Now suppose I am dealing with all suppose I add a new field saying public int what do we say, semester. Okay, like which semester the student is studying. Suppose I am dealing with all 8th semester students. Okay, then what do I need to write here? S1 dot semester equal to, what should I write? 8th semester student means 8th semester, right? 8, number 8. Similarly, S2 dot semester equal to 8, right? Now imagine I am creating 100 students and all these 100 students belong to semester 8. Is it efficient to write that particular student dot semester equal to 8 for every student? Will it not be easy if in the beginning itself, I mean, array is one thing. Even if I create an array, I have to fill these fields, or I need to write a loop. That's a different thing. If I know, suppose I am dealing only with 8th semester students, okay, then in the class, while creating the class itself, if I can specify that this particular student, all the students belong to 8th semester. Okay, so one way of doing that is, in the class itself, so to give values, you should not give directly to the fields when declaring the fields. to give default values. Usually, you see right now, suppose I don't give any values to this. Suppose for S2, for S1 I gave values. S1's name is Anil, age is 17, semester is 8. Now suppose I don't give values to S2. Okay. I just say S2, I just create S2. I'll just comment it. Okay. Now still I will try to print S2.name and S2.age. Okay. So let me comment this also for the time being. So S1's name is Anil and 17. Let me comment this. I printed S1.name, S1.age, S2. I just created a student, but I did not give any values. Okay. Now let's see what it will print. Okay, you see S1.name and age it printed. S2's.name is an empty string. It is a null string. S2's.age is 0. Because we did not give any value, it gives default values. Okay. Usually for any data type in C#, it gives some default value if you don't give a value. Like if it is an int, default value is 0. If it is bool, default value is false. If it is a string, default value is null. Okay. So for each data type, it gives a default value. If you don't give a value, it will assume that is the value of that variable. That's what it did here. Since name is a string, the default value is null. If you want to override that, you need to specify what is the name, what is the string. In the first case, we did that. In the second case, we did not specify anything. So it just took name as null only. Age is an integer, default value is 0. So if you don't change that, it will print 0 only. Okay. For the first student, we changed age to 17, but for the second student, we did not change anything. So default value, it printed 0. Okay. Now, semester is also an integer. For this, we want the default value to be 8 and not 0. Because we are dealing with only 8 semester students. Okay. So I want to change the default value. One way is go to each student instance and say S1.semester is 8, S2.semester is 8, S3.semester is 8. So change for each student. If there are 100 students, you need to write 100 lines. If there are 1000 students, you need to write 1000 lines. If there are 1 lakh students, you need to write 1 lakh lines. Okay. Instead of that, when I know that every student's default value is the same, why don't I set it at the class level itself? Okay. So what we can do, you see right now, still it is not technically the value for the class. It is a default value for the object you are going to create. Okay. So that value should come with the object. But we want to give it only once. Any object you create should have this as the default value for the semester. So to say that, we have something called, you all did OOP course, right? So what do you need to use? How do you do this? To give a default value to some fields. There are many fields, name, age, semester, etc. Some fields, I want this to be the default value. In this case, semester, I want the default value to be 8 for all the objects. What to do? Do you know of constructors? No? In object-oriented programming, you are not taught constructor? You are taught. So what is a constructor? When is it needed? Why is it needed? See, constructor is used exactly for this purpose that I mentioned just now. If you want to give default values to some variables, so that all the objects will have that value as the default value for that particular field, you will use a constructor. So, sorry, the constructor's name, basically constructor is a function, it's a method, but it's a special method. So how do we say it is a special method? That is, the constructor's name should be exactly same as that of the class. Okay, so since the class name is student, the constructor name should also be student. All right. So since it is a method or a function, you write whatever you want inside the function. So in this we write semester equal to 8. Okay. Now let me come here and now let me uncomment these lines. I mean, I did not even uncomment. I'll just add a line to print s2.semester. It should print 8. Okay. Similarly, for s1 also I will add and so here I'll just remove this. These are not necessary. This s2.semester, s1.semester, these are not necessary because already default values are given for semester for all the students at once. You see, it printed 8. So s1 semester is 8, s2 semester is 8. Now suppose I want to change s1's semester, then I explicitly write s1, and here you see all the fields are also shown. S1 age, S1 name, S1 semester, and then since it is a string, since it is a student, you have some other properties which you can use. Okay, so right now I want to say semester equal to say 7. Okay, now this 7 will override 8. Okay, default is 8, but if you want to change, you can change it. Okay, so let me run it. You see, S1 semester is 7, S2 semester is 8. Okay, so now even if you create 100 students, million students, whatever they are, the default semester for all these students will be 8. Okay, that is the thing. Now, what happens is, you created this constructor function because you wanted to change something. You wanted to give a default value. Suppose you don't want to give any default value. You need not create the constructor function. The compiler itself creates a default constructor function with the default values, whatever I mentioned earlier. String default value is null, int default value is 0, bool default value is false. So a constructor is in the backend created by the CLR, whatever we discussed last time, common language runtime, that creates a constructor by default. If you don't create a constructor, if you create a constructor, your constructor will be taken. Okay, you can also keep this constructor empty. It doesn't matter. You can just say public student, that's it, empty. That is also fine. You need not write anything. But that's of no use because the compiler will anyway do that. Okay, if you want to change something, you can do that. But one more thing you should have noticed is there is no return type for a constructor. Usually in a function, what do we say? Public or private, and then what is the return type? Int, string, whatever it is, and then the function name, and then the parameters, right? But for a constructor, there is no return type. That is something you need to keep in mind. Fine. In this function, we did not take any parameters. In this constructor, we did not take any parameters, but I can also take parameters and create and build a constructor, like so suppose so this semester thing, instead of making it default for all the students, suppose I want to take it as an input while creating the student itself. Okay, so what I can say int semester. Okay, and then, or I can say here int sem. Okay, and then I can say semester equal to sem. Okay, so now the thing is, say when some new student is joining in the middle of their curriculum, they shifted from another university, We don't know, they may join in 4th semester, 5th semester, 6th semester, something like that. Okay, so that I want to take as input from while creating the student itself. All right, so now I can say S3, sorry, var S3, I can say student S3 or var S3, anything is fine, new student, and here inside the brackets I will say maybe 7th sem or say 6th sem. Okay, so this student semester is fixed. Now we can fill the other attributes like S3 dot name equal to whatever, and S3 dot age equal to 18. Okay, now we can print all these again. Okay, now let us print. Okay, it is giving an error. What is it saying? There is no argument given that corresponds to the required parameter sem of student. Student dot student. Yeah, this is semester. So why is it saying? You see now since, okay, yeah, now since we have created a constructor that says you need to take an attribute. For S3's case we gave an attribute, but for S1 and S2's case we did not give any attribute while creating the student. We gave semester separately, right? So it does not allow this kind of creation with empty parameters. You have to give a parameter for S1 and S2 also. Okay, but suppose sometimes I may know the semester while the student is created itself, or sometimes I want to update it later in the future. So I may not know the semester right now. So sometimes I want to use a constructor with empty parameters. Sometimes I want to use a constructor with the data which I know already. Okay, in that case you can write multiple constructor definitions. Okay, these are called constructor signatures. So what I will do, I will write a constructor which takes a sem as an input, and I will also write an empty constructor which does not take any input. Okay, so here I'll just say public student. That's it. I'll leave it as it is. So now I gave two constructor definitions, a constructor which takes an argument and a constructor which does not take an argument. Now any of these definitions, if it sees, it accepts. Okay, S1 and S2 matches this definition of student. You're not taking any argument. That is fine. S3 matches this definition of student, that you are giving semester as input. That is also fine. So both the definitions are given in the class definition itself. Both the definition of constructors are given in the class definition itself. So you can create student any way you want using any of these two definitions. Okay. So now let's run it again. Yeah, it ran. Okay. So earlier there was only one constructor definition that expects you to give an argument, exactly one argument, and it has to be that of semester. So if you don't give any argument, it will not accept. On the other way, if you have an empty constructor without any arguments, then you cannot create a student with semester as input. Okay, so if you want to handle both cases, give both kinds of constructors. Then you can create student any way you want, with semester as input or without semester as input. You can update semester later. Okay, all right. And now suppose you see this sem is a temporary variable, right? You can give any name to the argument, and that argument name is used inside the function. That's why we give that name. Now suppose if this name is also semester, okay, but this semester is different from this semester name. Okay, now how do I tell the computer, if I say semester equal to semester, How does the computer know which semester is in LHS, which semester is in RHS? Right? Suppose here it was just SEM, okay? And here earlier my intention was to say that SEM equal to, semester equal to SEM, right? This was my intention. Whatever input you are giving, populate your semester field with that value. Now suppose my intention is different. I want to, whatever input I am giving, override that with the value in the semester field of the class. Okay? So here the meaning is clear because the names are different. Now what if this name is also semester? Now I have to write semester equal to semester. Now how does it distinguish which semester refers to which variable? Whether this semester, does it refer to this function argument or this class field? Similarly, whether this semester refers to this function argument or this class field. How does it know? Okay? There is no way except you add something, there is a special keyword called this. Okay? So I want to say this class field should be populated with the value which you pass through the function. So that's how we say this dot semester equal to semester. Okay? So, but this is just to give you an idea, but it is always a good practice to never name them same. Okay? It is better to keep the names different. So let me just keep this as SEM. Okay? So it is more clear. This dot semester equal to SEM. So this class field will get the value that you pass through the function. Okay? So it will work in the same way. Same thing, no difference. Okay? Now you may think, okay, why do I need a constructor? I mean, one is yes, default values, yes, but I can still give values to the variables whenever I want. I mean, although I need to repeat that same line, say the default semester is 8, but still I can write that line whenever I want. Okay? But suppose you have some other kinds of data types, like say each student does a list of courses in a particular semester, right? Now suppose I want to associate that courses list along with that particular student. Okay? So first what I will do, I will create a class called course. Okay? So each course, that course name, course ID, whatever it is. So it can be like string name, string ID, okay, and so on. So each course will have some name and ID. That is okay. Now we can create instances of that course, whatever, like this is one course. You may be doing some other course like machine learning, like earlier semester you did OOP. That can be another course. So you have different courses. Each course will have name and ID and all that. Faculty and so on. Now each student might be doing, not only might be, will be doing more than one course, right? So a list of such courses needs to be associated with each student. Okay? Now suppose what I will do, I will say course C1 equal to new, what should I write? I need to create courses, right? I need to create course 1, course 2, course 3 and so on, right? Yeah, new course. Right? Say C1 dot name equal to whatever this foundations of here I don't need underscores as well. Foundations of immersive technology C1 dot ID, it is CS4285 and so on. Why is it not reading? Faculty, why is it not suggesting? Sometimes it doesn't suggest, I don't know why. Okay, so this is one course. You can create another course. C2 dot name, let's say machine learning, C2 dot ID equal to whatever CS4286. Let's just assume that C2 dot faculty some XYZ. Okay, and so on. You can create multiple courses. Okay, now suppose I have a list of 100 courses offered by different departments in the institute. Now out of these 100 courses, each student will be doing a subset of courses, right? 5 or 6 each semester. Okay, so for a student in the student class, what do? Now each student will have another field. What is that? Public list of courses that student is doing. Okay, and what is the list type? What is the type of element in this list? Each element is of type. You can have any kind of element. You can have any kind of type. It's not necessarily string. You can have complex objects as well. In this case, it is course. The list name is courses. Okay, but what does this list consist of? Each element in this list is a course. It's like array of courses. Here it is a list of courses, right? So each student, whatever list of courses that student is doing, that is stored here, and the element type should be mentioned in the brackets. Here we have a data type or a class called course, so that should be put in these angular brackets of list. If it is integer, we say int. If it is string, we say string. But since it is a class, we say course. Okay, and we give a name to this array like ARR, or let me say instead of say courses, I'll just say array, or let's say L1. Okay, so L1 is a list of courses. Okay, or I can say course list. Okay, yeah, so in this course list each element is a course. Fine. Now say out of these two courses, S1 is doing both the courses, S2 is doing the first course, S3 is doing the second course. Okay, so first what do we need to say? We should say S1 dot course list dot add, right? Course list is a list, right? And how do you add element to a list? With dot add method. Okay, say C1, all right, and S1 dot course list dot add C2. S2 is doing only course 1, S3 is doing only course 2. Okay, we can do like this, right? each student's list will be different. So you just need to add, out of the 100 courses in the institute, add whichever courses each student is doing, add that to that student's list. Okay, that's what we are doing. Now let's see if this will run. It didn't. Why? What is the error? It is saying, okay, first course.id is because of its protection level. Yeah, I keep forgetting this public keyword. Sorry about that. Now let us see if it will run. Yeah, it got an exception here at the end. What is the exception? Object reference not set to an instance of an object. What does it mean? You see, if it is an int or string, you don't need to separately allocate memory for that. But if it is an object of a class, or if it is a list, or if it is an array, you need to create memory for that, right? You remember how do we create an array, or how do we create a list? So let me go to this. So arrays, what did we do? We said you can look at this statement also. Int bracket numbers equal to new int size of the array. Okay, you just didn't leave at int bracket numbers. You had to allocate space, number of integers you have to say. Similarly for list also. Yeah, you see, where numbers equal to new list and the type of list and empty brackets and whatever elements go into the list. Okay, you just didn't leave it with where numbers or list int numbers. You have to create, you have to allocate memory for that. You have to say new list of this type, then it will allocate some memory, then you can add elements. Okay, so in our case as well, we have to, before we, for each of these students course list, we have to allocate memory for that list. So here we have to say s1 dot course list equal to new list of course. It's suggested automatically. Okay, we have to give like this. Okay, and same with s2 and s3. Okay, now let us see if it will work. Yeah, it worked. I didn't print them. I can also print, but it didn't give the exception error. Okay, it didn't give the exception error because it expects you to allocate a memory every time you are using the course list field, course list parameter. Okay, so far what did we do? Every time we want to use s1.courseList or s2.courseList, we first gave allocated memory to that list. Okay, but is it not the job of the constructor to do that? It's not the job of the user to do that. I should not allocate memory. I mean, you should not give me permissions to allocate memory for that. You should have allocated memory and then given to me. The only permission you should give to me is to add or delete a course. Okay, so rather than writing it like this for each student, each course list instance, you create memory, you give one line here itself. In the student constructor, you give the line, that is course list equal to new list. So now you can remove these memory creation lines for the list. So now the list automatically exists for each student. Every time you create, the memory for the list for that student is also created. You just need to add objects to that list. Okay, so now I commented those lines, but still the code should work because I wrote a line in the constructor. Okay, object reference, still why it is saying Okay. Just give me a minute. Yeah, it should work. No, there is some error only in this S3 dot course list. Why? Okay. Sorry. Yeah. You see, I added this line only in this definition of the constructor. In this definition of the constructor, I didn't add this line, no? So I should add this line here as well. Okay. Now I can uncomment this and it will work here also. So whichever definition of constructor it is taking, only in that definition it will look. The S1 and S2 were using the first definition of constructor, so there is no problem. I gave memory allocation for the list. But in the second definition of constructor, earlier I did not put this line. I did not give memory allocation for that. So when I created S3, it did not allocate memory to its course list. So it did not, so it gave an error. So once I added this line, S3 also worked. Okay. But now again, it's a headache. You see, now there can be so many constructor definitions. You see, I can also add another constructor definition which takes more parameters, say name of the student, age, and semester. Let me use different names. Sem. So I can say this dot name equal to name, this dot age equal to a, this dot semester equal to sem. Okay. So now I can create another student where S4 equal to new student, and in this I can give all the parameters during creation itself. I can say name is whatever, Sunil, age is 19 and semester is 7. Okay, now I need not write s4.name is so and so, s4.age is so and so, s4.semester is so and so. I need not write that. Okay, and I can just print these values. Okay, so let me run this. You see, it printed the values of S4 as well. Okay, so here the construction is done in one single line because I sort of gave such a constructor definition. So you can give different constructor definitions with all possible combinations of your fields. Like here we have 3 fields, actually 4 fields, but we are not giving this course list as a parameter to the constructor. Out of these 3 fields, we can choose which parameter to give as argument to the constructor. I can create a constructor which takes only name as parameter, or a constructor which takes only age as parameter, or a constructor which takes only semester as parameter, or I can create a constructor which takes name and age as parameters, or name and semester as parameters, or age and semester as parameters, and so on. So all possible combinations. So basically 3C1 plus 3C2 plus 3C3, all these combinations you take. So many different kinds of constructor definitions you can create, right? So that is one way of doing it. But then if there is something which you want to add in each of the constructors, which is common to each of all the constructors, then you need to copy paste that line in all the constructors. Otherwise it will not work for a particular object which is created using a particular constructor definition, like earlier how it did not work for S3. Okay, so here it is fine. We are copying this line into all other definitions also. So this is the first definition of constructor with no arguments at all, that has this line, course list is new list. Second definition is which takes only semester as argument, that also we copied this line. And the third definition is which takes all the 3 as inputs. Here also we should copy the line. Okay, but what if we forget to copy the line, and what if there are more than one line? There is more than one line. Okay, is there any other way to sort of reduce our work and to make it more neat? One way is, if the constructors are sort of incrementally being built, like a constructor which does not take any arguments, then a constructor which takes only 1 argument, then a constructor which takes 2 arguments, then 3 arguments, and so on, then what you can do is you can add a keyword called this with empty brackets, okay, to say that use this constructor, use the previous constructor. Okay, whatever steps are there in the previous constructor, use all those and use some additional steps. Okay, so since in the previous constructor this line is given, that is to allocate memory to the list, in this constructor you can delete that line. Okay, now similarly in the next one, here we will use just the immediate previous constructor. What is that? It takes semester argument, right? This sem. Okay, now so whatever came in the previous constructor, you need not repeat it again here. So since this line is there, this dot semester equal to sem, you need not repeat that here. You can remove that line. And you need not repeat this line also, because this came in the first constructor. You can remove that line. Okay, so only the new lines you need to give. All right, so let us see if this will work. I think okay, 26, 57, okay. Okay, I need to give this. Okay, yeah. Yeah, now it worked. You see, now you need not worry about giving the allocating memory for the list in each definition of constructor. If that needs to be repeated incrementally if that needs to be repeated in other constructors which are incrementally being defined, you just inherit the previous constructor to the next constructor and so on, and remove the repeating lines because all the previous lines will anyway be inherited. Okay, so that is what we were doing. So here, to understand this definition, you need to go to the previous definition. Okay, and this itself is coming from its previous definition. It is carrying some statements from the previous constructor definition and so on. So you need to go step by step. Okay, so I hope you got an idea, but I also believe it is quite it might be confusing to you. So many things are being discussed, so you need to go back and look at this recording again to understand some of these things. Okay, so basically constructors are used if you want to give default values to the fields. That is the main thing. If you don't want to give any default values to the fields, you don't need to use constructor, it will use a default constructor. Okay, but if you want to give default value to all the objects of this class that you are going to create, use a constructor. Okay, now another main reason where you need to use constructor is, say if you are dealing with complex objects like lists or something like that, for them it's not that you are giving default values, but you need to allocate memory by default. So that memory allocation step should be done in the constructor itself. That is what we were doing here. So what is this step doing? It is allocating memory to this course list. That's all. It is not giving any values to it. What courses this particular student is doing or that particular student is doing, it is not saying any of that. It is just saying create a list and give space to it, so that each object, when that object is created, not only, you see, when we say we are creating an object, what is happening? Suppose if you don't have this list field, if you have only this name, age, semester, when you are creating an object, what is happening? It is creating memory for all these three fields. It is creating memory for name, memory for age, memory for semester. You need not do anything about that. But for non-primitive data types like list, it does not create memory automatically when it creates the object. You need to specify explicitly create memory by default, and that you can say in your own constructor. Okay, so that from now whenever an object is being created, it will create memory not only for primitive data types, but it will allocate memory even for non-primitive data type like list. That is what we were doing in constructors. And then you can have multiple constructor definitions. These are called signatures, multiple constructor signatures. Each signature differs by the parameters that you pass to it and the order in which you pass the parameters. And given some n number of fields that you have, you can choose any of them in any order you want as parameters to your constructors. That will give a new signature. Like I said, we had 3 fields, so you can choose to not select any of those fields, just empty constructor. So that is like 3C0, or you can choose any one of them, so you will get 3C1 combinations, or you can choose any 2 of them, you will get 3C2 combinations, or you can choose all 3 of them, that is 3C1. Okay, now if you change the order also, again you will get more combinations. Okay, so you can have different constructor signatures, but no two constructor signatures should be same. Like I already have a public student int sem, it is taking sem as input. You cannot have another constructor with the same definition, same input. You have to have something else different. Okay, so as long as there is at least one change, you can have a new definition or a new signature of constructor. Okay, And if there are incremental changes, you can just inherit from the previous constructor. But if they are not incremental changes, they are completely different changes, then you can't inherit from the previous constructor. That is the difference. Okay, so that is constructors for you. These will also be useful later in Unity. Okay, so yeah, so let's stop here today.